Hello, and welcome again to another edition of Pioneer Valley Life. I'm your host, James Sullivan, and we're here in the studios of Easthampton's E-Media in the Eastworks building. And my guest today is Nicole LaChapelle. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. I'm really psyched to be here.
Good, good. So a lot of people in Easthampton and the surrounding area would know you as the mayor of Easthampton, but you know, I would rather have a conversation with Nicole rather than the mayor.
Well,
if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Okay. Yeah, I read a little bit about you. You know, you're obviously in government now, but you haven't always been in government. But I read that you did get a degree in government at Smith.
I did.
And was that did that kindle your interest in eventually getting into government, or did this take a while to get here?
Yeah, I mean, my interest was kindled in sixth grade. My what was then called lunch lady and recess minder, Charlotte Rohan. I just adored her. I looked up to her, and her husband was running for state representative. And so we had this like impromptu, this is what a state representative does and whatnot. And back in those days, politics and schools and public service was all just one big melting pot. I grew up in Holyoke. And so I would hold signs for Representative Bob Rowan and I would get extra milk or time at recess. And so there was definitely an incentive there, but it was really fascinating that I could talk to somebody who would then be in Boston talking about what I wanted in this, really it looked like a castle, to me, but on our State House. And that really never left the back of my mind.
I read a little about, you have an impressive resume of jobs that you held for your career, so to speak.
Yeah.
That, so tell us a little bit about what you did before you became mayor.
Sure. I mean, right before I became mayor, I was helping my cousin out in Connecticut. He has a law firm, small practice that represents SEIU, 1199, and some other union interests generally. And I was helping out with the ERISA retirement programs, language that they had, claims, looking at what bigger corporations were doing as they were dismantling nursing homes and care facilities. I'm also a licensed superintendent and a licensed special education administrator, and practiced in those fields at the Holyoke Public Schools for a little while, but also for 20 years with a private set of programs that would partner with public schools to allow students with a more traumatic experience to be able to stay as close as possible to their home communities and, if possible, in their home schools.
That's great, yeah. So that so you have a background a varied background. But did you get a law degree right after your Smith degree, or
No, I actually I started working in the educational field, and just by virtue of working in that field, you really have to make a decision about graduate degrees and what you wanted to do. And I had taught a little bit, but really teaching is an art, and I am not that type of artist. So I was looking at a master's in education, maybe a doctorate level degree in education, and I really thought about what I like to do. Going back to holding signs and whatnot and being involved. And I knew I was pretty young, that it wasn't just going to be in education, and I didn't want to limit myself. So I went to law school. Started law school in 1989, graduated in 2002, and passed the bar in 2002.
Yeah. So you held these other positions as well as being a lawyer, so that was it.
Yeah. And have a daughter who, I say, and my family, we went through it all together.
Yeah. Were you a single mom?
No, my family was by a partner,
Yeah.
so I had lots of support.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And it made it possible for me and how I operate and function. And
Right.
but yeah, my daughter spent some time though in law libraries in the back of classrooms.
Right.
You
Waiting.
know,
Yeah.
You know, snow days, vacations.
Right.
You know, however it rolled.
Yeah. No, one time I went to one of the meetings at the town hall, and there was a woman there, and she had her child with her.
Yeah.
The child was over on the side doing something
Yeah.
while the meeting was going on. You
Yeah.
know, and that, I guess sometimes you're forced to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was working in educational settings up in Greenfield, it's kind of a half legend based in truth. Is there'd be a snow day down here in the Lower Valley, and the program I was running, we really tried. We just wanted the children in the classroom every single day. So if there was a snow day where my daughter went to school, she would just come to my school, and it was a revelation. She was like, "Wait a minute, on snow days." Like, you just don't go to another school, you just don't. And so that was a pointed conversation between she and I about her expectation for snow days, and that there was something going on other than coming to school and work with me.
Right. So that, you said you were working with somebody in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And, but how were you recruited to run for office, or is that something you decided on your own?
Interesting. I mean, I've always been involved in politics, like campaign side of things. I really never thought I'd run for office. And then mid-2010s, there were just some things going on politically and just kind of even in education that made me think about where I could have an impact on what was happening, what I wanted to see come forward. And some friends who I had done a lot of political work in 2016 started saying, "Hey, would you think about running for mayor?" And the answer was no for quite a long time. It was yes. I was really concerned about how the 2016 presidential election came out. I thought about how it was going to affect my former students. I thought about how it was going to affect my clients who were working in healthcare facilities and looking at corporate takeovers and what it would do, and that the incoming administration was very open to all of those things. And as a student of government, I believe that the city-state is one of the best structures the human race has ever created, and that in times of turmoil or uncertainty, people return to where they came from. They go back to Main Street, and we hold it in Main Street. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run for mayor. I'm going to hold down Main Street and work with the residents of Easthampton to be the very best we can.
So that was your first election, and you won your first election.
I did. It was. It's a lot of work, and got a little nasty. All politics is personal, but I was elected in 2017, re-elected in 2019, and then re-elected in 2021 for a 4-year term. This is the first 4-year term, and the first time the mayor of Easthampton has been elected by ranked choice voting.
Interesting. Yeah. There's a difference. People use the term politics all the time.
Yeah.
But compare government to politics.
Sure. I mean, I think politics sets a stage, a tone, a culture, and an expectation, and that can be, it's very fluid. It's pliable. When you get to government, you're talking about really how are you getting things done, setting exact expectations for the public of what they will get out of government, what they won't. You are actually meeting hands-on the needs, wants, hopes, dreams, struggle of the folks who look to that form of government. And it's really gritty work. I mean, it is boots on the ground, literally lots of, I was going to say pen on paper. I'm still a pen on paper person. But you're writing policies and you're reviewing things and you're making, difficult decisions in the day that will have impact sometimes for generations. And government's more about getting it done. Politics is about setting the stage, and while government is happening, politics is all around it, resetting the stage as different elements change.
Right. And I imagine that in a lot of the jobs that you held in those sectors, politics comes into play just about everywhere in some sense.
Yeah, they're interrelated. To say that there can be government without politics or politics without government isn't just a pithy saying. It's the reality. It's how humans process what they want to see in their community.
Right.
And politics is a part of that conversation. And the result of politics and the remeshing of what people want are forms of government and government actions. I mean, they are intertwined. This sullying of the word politics or whatnot, I think is, you look in the dictionary and primary definition, secondary. And so I think that definition of politics and the sullyingness of in reality is like number 8 on the number of definitions.
Right.
When, of recent it's gotten a little more muddy-cloudy, but over time, no.
And so, maybe in one scenario, politics is person to person, but when you're in government, it becomes you are relating to every person here in town. You're responsible for the 16,000 people. In a sense.
Absolutely, and it's there are a lot of different dynamics. Like I put myself, being mayor is who I am. Like right now, and I had no doubt that it would be anything different. But every once in a while, something will happen. I'll put forward a policy, I make a decision, a budget decision, and I kind of look back and smile, and in my head I'm going like, I'm not so sure that my personal needs, wants, and politics are being met by the mayor right now. And that's, a part of it. I am my own mayor, and I'm 16,000 people's mayor, and, and trying to find, not even the middle ground, but just best course forward and backwards and sideways. It's 4-dimensional.
Right.
It's really 4-dimensional.
Yeah, because every person here in town has a life.
Absolutely.
And that life can be affected by any number of things, from the government perspective.
Yes.
From the national perspective, the state perspective, the local perspective, and especially in the times we're in now, it's it can be kind of crazy. And
it can. I think it's one of the things that when people talk about skills or superpowers, I think one of my superpowers, not just as mayor, is that I can hold an individual's the concept of an individual's wants or needs and who they are as an individual, while also considering the whole and kind of going back and forth and figuring out, prioritizing it, problem solving to meet as many needs as possible. And that's not just as mayor. Like I see myself doing that, when I was practicing law as, an educational administrator, as an activist in the streets of Berkeley back in the late 80s.
Oh, great.
Being able to do that. And it's hard. I mean, as you get an idea and you want to go for it and you've got the platform to do it. And then you kind of, you're thinking about, okay, but what's going on for a person, on this individual level and a smaller group? And how does that mesh with, does it really need to be done this way? Can we bring more people closer to the solution or direction they'd like to go in?
Right. Yeah, because some people are going to think, well, that doesn't benefit me. Why does it benefit them? And, and things can happen in that way, So.
Well, I mean, when you're in the comfort of good community in a group and you've had a bad day, it's very easy to think that your individual position or thought should carry the day because you're in a strong, comfortable community. Right? And the reality is none of us go very far alone. Right.
So what has been your experience and your thoughts on women in government?
I think before I was elected, and my interactions with government, not politics, it was really hard to watch. And it certainly, I think, had a piece of my mind of why I really saw myself. I saw what women in government were going through, what roles they were relegated to. You could have somebody who was an assistant, a secretary on a federal level, and that woman was still expected to walk in with the coffee. And that wasn't that long ago, and I'm sure it is that way today. And voicing and tippy-toeing. I've never been in a professional situation where I've never had to consider that, but in government, 52% of our population is female, and you wouldn't know it if you walk into most agencies and government, and then you go to office holders. I mean, some of the things that I have dealt with and had to face, and other elected officials on all levels of government have had to face, are singularly more pointed and mean and petty because I'm a woman. There are things that I've done as mayor that a mayor before me has done, and he's a man. And it didn't make the paper.
Right, yeah.
And that's nothing towards the man. It's just, this is the reality of society. And I look at, Maura Healey, I think of, Nancy Pelosi. I mean, I think of my fellow female mayors and councilors, and select board members. It's, there's a heightened, and there are a lot of days where I'm just like, this is the job, this is where this, do I want to get this done? Just understanding that there's this different darkness there.
Yeah.
And yes, so far every day was yes.
Yeah.
This is, not what I signed up for, but what I am committed to.
Yeah, and it seems to be, it's a bias, and it's not just government.
No.
It's, women struggle, there's a singer named Joan Armatrading.
Yes.
And she has a song that I really like. It says, if women ruled the world, it would be a good thing.
It would be a good thing.
And I've always paid attention to that song. And, and that's the way it is. It's as I sit here as a male, I know what exists. And, there are biases that I know I have, but I hope I never get in a position where they come out.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing from a standpoint.
I think that's difficult as an elected official. That's difficult as like a person, right?
Yeah.
You have these biases, and you can catch what you can catch, and some of them are just so ingrained in us. And all of a sudden, they're just a part of decision making, or who you are, or whatnot, and they show themselves.
Right.
And it's a very humbling, mind-opening experience to own them. Like, it's not, it's not like a smudge of dirt, and you go, oh, there's a bias in you.
Right. Yeah.
It's ingrained in you, and you really have to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
And there are rewards for doing that work.
Right.
Right. And it holds us back in a lot of places too when we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And it's something that we all have to be aware of. But sometimes people just ignore it, and that's their bias or whatever. But and it's not just in government, like we said. It could be anywhere.
Absolutely.
I know you're not running for re-election.
Nope.
And why was that decision made?
I made it a while ago, and not because of COVID or being mayor. It's just crazy or any of that. I ran for a purpose, and saw a lot of stuff in Easthampton that I thought should be done, that was in our comprehensive plan, and it seemed that the energy, different economic factors were going in a way where there's a real opportunity to get those things done. And I, talking with a small group of friends and what they thought about it, but then mostly some soul seeking, searching myself, and saying like, I can, I can serve and help my community. And that window is closing. The comprehensive plan, we're moving right along. I'm really proud of what my team and I have done.
Yeah.
I feel good about what's coming towards Easthampton, even in turbulent times. And I don't want to overstay my welcome. I mean, I think Easthampton has a great conversation coming up of what's next for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's very difficult. One thing I've learned as mayor, like I've always been a person who has had influence and privilege and education and funds to have a good life. And I'm aware of I get more time at the table to talk because of those things. As a mayor, that ability and that space is even larger. And I don't think that after being mayor for 8 years, I could, without putting my thumb on the scale, really lead lead Easthampton's conversation of what's best and what's next for it without imposing my agenda directly or indirectly. And
Right.
I think we have some great conversations, decisions to make.
Yep, yep. And I think there's nothing wrong with change. Like you say, you've set some things in motion.
Yeah.
And most people, I think, agree with them. They see a future for Easthampton.
Yeah.
The first time I came to Easthampton was many, many years ago. And when I moved back here like 5 years ago, it's amazing the changes that have taken place here. And that started before you were actually mayor. But I mean,
absolutely.
It's just looking at what exists now versus what had existed before, and what's coming next. And like you say, you're proud of what you've done, and that's important. And what are you going to do next?
I really don't know. I mean, I my budget's before city council.
Right.
That's like mayors. Mayors really. When it comes everything else, like it comes down to it's like the budget. You make the budget, you pass the budget, you live by that budget. Like it's the budget. So that's a big deal. Last night we had a really good finance meeting around some year-end appropriations and funding some stuff that we wanted to get funded. The city takes up the budget again on June 18th. And then we kind of close out the year, June 30th, and then I'll start kind of looking and thinking about, really,
right.
what's possible and what's out there, and spend some more time with my granddaughter, who's 22 months, and really, my grandmother would say is full of vinegar and something else that I'm not going to say online.
Right. I know that saying.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that and figure, and see what comes.
But you're also, aren't you you're the head of the Massachusetts Mayors Association?
I was.
Oh, you're not anymore?
Yeah, no, Mike Nicholson in Gardner, Mass. is the current president. I'm the past president.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of work, a lot of fun.
Do you think that Easthampton gets good support at the state level?
Well, still being in office and the state budget about to go to the governor's office, of course, I'm going to say yes. No.
Right.
I think we do okay.
Yeah.
I think and we have a good Western Mass delegation. The challenge here is really regional.
Yeah.
You're past Worcester, and it's just hard to keep your voice, and that's the number of people here versus Boston, and but also I think that there is more than a casual indifference to the regional economy and regional needs here, because it is just so far beyond how things run east of Worcester.
Right.
And so, sure, we do. Any municipality can do better. There could be pots of money and programs that could be better suited not just to Easthampton, to other communities that are not, and there's not a lot of taste for that in Boston.
Right.
So the regional, it's there. I mean, I think we've had a good 7 years of funding and also of getting some of our policies through and redoing our charter. But I think that Massachusetts as a state, whether we have so much confidence in our hubris, we need to come together seriously, geographically, economically, as a community. I mean, we're small. If what we know is coming as far as migration, immigration, climate change, like it needs that divide needs to shrink pretty fast for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
I see it happening in some ways, but I don't see it happening in really important ways, and funding formulas and stuff like that.
Right. I had Homar Gomez as a guest on my show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My former city council president,
That's
now
right,
my
yeah.
state rep. Yep.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, and he was on the show before he got elected.
Okay.
Mostly I was talking to him about the influence of the Hispanic population in Western Mass and things like that, which is very important. But I think he's going to do well, and a good representative for Easthampton for sure.
100%, and I am, he just is so well intentioned, thought out, purposeful in his public service. It was, it was an honor, and it was a lot of fun serving with Omar.
That's great.
On city council, and we're starting to do work with him as state rep, and he is just as on point and informed and helpful as he was when he was on city council.
Yeah. Yeah, because I met him on a personal level, and that's, that was, I knew him on a personal level before, he ever, know. And, so that was interesting because that is, when he goes home at night, he's Omar.
He's Omar.
Yeah, and same with you. When you go home at night, you're Nicole, and you want to be that. You don't want to take everything home with you.
No, I try not to.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it follows me home, but,
yeah.
Again, I mean, I think that the role, I mean, I feel like I ran late in life enough where I know who I am. I knew who I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to lose myself. It wasn't going to change my identity.
Yeah.
And, how fortunate that I was able to serve in a community that really did share my values and was looking for different ways to make those values real. So I'm not living in a community that's so different than, what my core values are.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always the case. There's a million other reasons to run for office, and all of them, are honorable. Most of them are honorable.
Yeah.
But the value matching isn't always there.
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate. So I walked in, knowing who I was, and certainly lost a big part of who I am as mayor. But I know it's just the role. It'll slip off.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's important to have that perspective. I'm sure. Yeah. And there have been controversies in your, but I mean, that's part of it. You're in that position. You put yourself in that position to be a possibility of of a controversy.
I mean, I put myself in the position, and sometimes I really put myself behind. I mean, the controversies. I don't know about all of them, but most of them, some part of them, I certainly didn't help myself. Reacting too quick or reacting based on, personal knowledge, experience, or, looking beyond the process and looking like that's the goal, And, you talk about humility and talk about understanding that these people who are very upset with me or whatnot, are attacking the mayor, sometimes in ways that I never imagined I would have to deal with as mayor. And while it feels personal and they're saying very personal, hurtful things, they wouldn't say those things to me if I was a mayor. I'm just like literally some of them are my neighbors. Like, but that still, that still gets in your head, certainly. And no, but then you just don't help yourself. Then there's that. Right. And you have to say sorry. And you have to say, like, I'm wrong, and back away from it. And,
that's important.
Government's not graceful. And nor am I. Nor am I.
Yeah. Well, you've been very graceful today, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken time to come in and talk with me.
Yeah, this is fun.
And, it's important. This, e-media here is very important.
Yes.
And, I know the city supports e-media. I know you support e-media, and that's very important to get things out there in this environment where today I'm talking to Nicole LaChapelle.
Right.
And you happen to be the mayor, but I mean, in another 6 months you won't be the mayor.
I know. Do I get invited back after once I'm not mayor? I mean,
Sure.
No, I think community television, the importance of e-media and access to government meetings and whatnot are crucial. I think as our communities have evolved and there are certain traditions and organizations that aren't as strong or as prominent, that this is the median, this is the stage to keep those close connections and understand who the people in your community are and what they think past what you think of them when they drive by or they're getting vanilla ice cream at the store or something like that. And It's super accessible. You know, you've got your phones, you got TVs, computers. You can stream it. It's it's easy to get a hold of the host. Isn't like watching Chuck Todd.
Right.
And I do see more and more interest in it. But again, like that's one thing when you talk about being in Western Mass, like additional funding for community television is I find that the need out here is urgent. It should be better funded and more funded in all across the country and Eastern Mass too. But for Western Mass, when we have fewer and fewer TV stations, but also we have fewer and fewer local meeting places.
Right.
That this is the way we can communicate and interact and give feedback to not just the government, but to our fellow community members.
Yeah.
And that has been, that sort of funding has been a real challenge.
Right. Yeah.
To get that done.
Yeah. Well, we're working on it.
We are. We work it. We did okay. We just renegotiated our cable license, and that's the fees from the cable license,
Right.
Fund e-media, and
Yep.
and I say we did well, like as well as you can do against
That's right.
A corporate like Goliath is too small of a word for what
Yes.
Spectrum Charter is.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you fight the fight.
Right. Well, great. I know you'll keep fighting for the rest of your term, and after that, I'm sure you will in some fashion.
That's the idea. I just
Yeah.
don't know what it's going to be.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Because there is definitely a need for people like you to be in those positions.
I am so grateful to, have the opportunities that I've had. And sometimes when I say this, I'm like, gosh, so many elected officials. But really it is. I mean, regardless of what's going on,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing that, I have been elected by, my fellow voters
Yeah.
to represent them. And,
Yeah.
The scope of that and the privilege and the weight of that
Yeah.
is something I don't take lightly.
Right. It's a unique experience that you've had.
It is. It is. It's very unique.
Right.
It will define the rest of my life.
Right. Well, thanks very much for being my
Thank you,
guest
James.
today. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I hope to come back.
Good. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay.